Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, we got Labor Day weekend coming up here. I don't know what you got planned, but I'm gonna be watching some football, I think. And it's that time of year, man. Hope you're doing well.
Doing fantastic.
And I've got some exciting news here for anybody watching on YouTube. You can see I'm holding up a copy of Lead Every Day, our new book, Mark. It will release before our next episode, so they'll hear this week's, and then next week there'll be a new book out in the world with our operating system. I'm so excited about this. People can get their copies anywhere they get their books, or visit leadeveryday.com. We got some cool stuff that's launching around that. And if you're looking to give one to the people in your organization, you're looking for an operating system to help you build a leadership culture and take performance to maybe places it's never been before. We highly recommend picking up a copy for you and your leaders. I think it will serve you well. I'm excited about that, Mark. And congratulations.
And they can pre-order now
for you.
They can pre-order. It's on Amazon.
They can pre-order. And I've got my Lead Every Day t-shirt on today. So I'm celebrating the book launch next week. That's going to be great. Okay. So if you're listening today, let's talk business here today, Mark. And my question, let's start it off. You're out there, you got your costs are increasing. I was talking to a guy today. It was crazy. He said he's got a supplier that he's got in a service industry. He's got a supplier. He said, I can't get over our cost, how much they've gotten, how much they've gone up since I started. He's been doing what he's doing for about 25 years. And he said, it's just extraordinary how much costs have gone up. Margins are tighter than ever for a lot of people. Maybe thinner than ever, than they've ever been. Maybe profit, people even struggling to have some profits. And I'm guessing, everybody who has people that work for them, those people would like to have more money. And so there's this tension that's going on, between payroll and profits. We'll call it that. We'll just, maybe that'll be our title for our episode, Mark. But I think there's a tension going on when it comes to running a business. You got people that work for you. They want to make more. You're trying to have some profits as well. This feels hard. So let's dive in today, man.
Yeah. And I love the concept of tension. And I think it's real. So we're feeling it too. I mean, we need to acknowledge it's not just something we're talking to leaders about. We're feeling it with our team, and we want to demonstrate a generous spirit with our people, but profits matter. Right. And so I think
we always say that you practice your way to high performance. So if I'm listening today, what do we do? What do leaders do, man?
Well, what do we do? I think the first thing that I would say, based on your use of the term tension, is that we acknowledge it's a tension to manage. It's not a tension to eliminate. I think there has always been some tension between payroll and profits, and I think it's not going to get better. I mean, you talk about the businesses that can't believe how their costs have gone up. Well, that's why people want to earn more money, because their costs have gone up too, right? They're trying to buy groceries and put food on the table and have a vacation and on and on and on. So it's a real tension. And I think our challenge as leaders is to navigate and to manage that tension.
Yeah, that's just a good reminder there that you'll never eliminate it. I'm not sure this is ever going to go away. So Mark, you worked for Chick-fil-A. A lot of people know that. You worked for Chick-fil-A Inc. for a long time. And the founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, he had some interesting things to say about this idea. He was an incredibly generous man, but can you share a little bit about what Truett said? I think this is sure appropriate here.
I think this is a good place to start for leaders who are trying to manage this tension, is to set a profit expectation. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily a target. I mean, you may argue that you want a target. I'm just talking generically and just talking conceptually. Truett, again, as you said, was very generous. I would say the most generous person I've ever known, not just with finances, but with his time and his attention. I mean, generosity embodied Truett Cathy.
Yeah.
But he would tell people there is no mission without margin. He did a lot of good things with money, but you have to have it before you can do good things with it. And so he would always say, unapologetically, we are a business. We are a for-profit business. And so I think for those out there that say, well, just pay people more, I think you have to accept the reality of margins are thin and they're getting thinner. And we don't have a bottomless, bucket full of money. It doesn't grow on trees kind of thing. So
yeah,
I think you just got to set the profit imperative. Maybe it's like, no, we have to have profits, and we want sales, but we want profitable sales. And I think that's a great place to start the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if you think about it, it's, if we lose that, I mean, that really is the through line of a business, right? You're not in business very long. You'd be a nonprofit, and that's okay. There's a lot of great nonprofits, but if you're a business, you have to have a profit. And I think anybody that's not really thinking that way, that would be a concern, because what ends up happening is everybody loses their job. If that's,
yeah. I mean, you've heard the saying maybe your entire life that cash is king. Well, profits are oxygen.
Yeah.
And an organization without profits will suffocate. It'll die.
Yeah. And I think this is no different than our own personal finances. Like if we think just because we have more, we can spend more, everything gets all out of whack. And so we've got to have some discipline there in the way we think about, the resources that we've been given. I know you've talked a lot about the importance of being a steward, of being a manager of what you've been entrusted with. And I think that's that there's no question here. This is important. So,
all right. So what do we do? I've talked about setting a profit imperative and expectation. We're going to be profitable, but what else can we do? What can leaders do?
I think back to times where I've had questions as an owner or as a leader who was managing, budgets that were dealing with this kind of stuff. And one of the first things I always tried to do was what I'll just put under the bucket of benchmarking. Like, what is the market value of a position? If we're thinking about, paying people, because we both would say that everybody needs to be paid a fair wage. There's no question about that. But I think looking outside of our organization, and this can be as simple as Googling it. I mean, you can literally go to the internet and you can find pay scales and start to look, and are you in line? And I know there've been times in the organizations I've been a part of where we weren't in line, and we had to create a plan to get there. And then there've been other times where, I had somebody a few years ago who was complaining about their pay, and it turned out that they were being compensated way more than what the market value was. And so they ended up, not really satisfied with it, and they moved on, and that was fine. But I think benchmarking is a really great tool. It's a good chance for us to look at, like, what other people doing. And I'm not saying compare yourself to everybody else. I think that can be dangerous sometimes, but I think there is a market value that's typically out there, and we can find out what that is if we'll just do a little bit of digging.
Yeah. And I'm not against a Google search, but you may even want to do a little bit more than that. One is you may want to talk to your peers in other organizations.
For sure.
And find out what they're encountering and what they're doing. You may also, depending on the scope and scale of your enterprise, you may want to hire a third party to do a salary audit. I've been part of those over the years. They can be very, very insightful. If you're not careful, you can have bias that creeps into the system, and sometimes it might take a third party to help identify some of that. You may have people at one level that are earning disproportionate compared to another level, which sets you up for all kind of liabilities. And it was nothing nefarious or intentional, but somebody stays with you a long time and you keep giving them raises, and all of a sudden you've created inequity with other men and women, maybe doing the same role, maybe doing different roles. And so, yes, you can Google, talk to your peers, but if you've got an organization of scope and of scale, you may actually want a third party to come in and help you take a really hard look to be sure that you're doing things in order.
Yeah, and that's the point. I mean, to me, once I've done the benchmarking and we got a good grasp of the landscape out there, now we've got a chance to really have conversations with people about their expectations, about what we think is fair, and that dialogue does nothing but help. I mean, it's just it is oxygen. We always say that communication is the oxygen of execution. It's really the oxygen of every part of the organization. If we'll talk to each other about it, and we know each other's expectations, and we can see what's fair, and we can lay that out and explain that. And I just think so many times we hope that the frustration will go away, and that never works. I mean,
hope
really
is not a strategy. We've covered that before.
It's not good. So
yeah. And let's go back to something you said a minute ago. And I think it's a derivative of these real conversations with real people, which is another theme we keep coming back to over episode after episode. Some people may have unrealistic expectations. You started 10 minutes ago referencing the fact that there is a market value for a role, and it's a range, and it may vary by industry, and it probably varies by geography within a country or across the globe, but there's a range. And there are men and women in roles who have a deep-seated, heartfelt interest in earning more than that role, that band. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. But I mentioned earlier, you start paying people more than a role is worth, and you set yourself up for actual legal liability, because there's got to be a fairness filter that's applied to this whole thing. You find yourself in a lawsuit. And so those men and women have choices to make. And I have known people, and I think you've known people. You mentioned somebody who moved on. I know people who have literally within an organization changed departments because they could get a role that had a higher market value in another department, and they were qualified. So they moved literally not because of the work, and this is no criticism or judgment, but they wanted to go to that next band. They saw it only as a step on a long career journey. And so they literally said, I don't know how long I'm going to be in this role, but I'm going to make more money while I'm there. I've known other people. I've had people on my team who left. One guy left to found a company. Well, a founder of a successful company is going to earn more than a junior staff member on my team. Well, more power to him, but he had to make those choices. So I do think this step about talking to people about their hopes and dreams, not just for their career, but for their income, I think that's an important step, because if you know you can't meet someone's income expectations, why not tell them that early, as opposed to making them wonder and potentially floundering?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what else?
I think let's go down this road for a second here about when we pay somebody, they need to add value for their role. And you had an interesting conversation with the CEO. Share that. I thought that was really, really good.
It was a very thought-provoking comment in the moment, but the more I have thought about it, I think it makes a lot of sense. He said, every time I hire a new staff member, I make more money, because he's counting on them adding more value than he's paying them.
Yeah. And that goes back to where we started with that. There's got to be a profit kind of mindset every time you make any kind of decision. Really, it's baked into that.
Now, some of that is real easy, straightforward. Let's take our world. If we're going to send out a trainer, we know what that trainer earns, and we know what the market price is for that training, and you can calculate the margin. So sometimes it's really easy to say, yep, I want to add another trainer because it's going to be a profitable decision. In other cases, it's an indirect or a dotted line. So let's go back to my corporate world. You may want to hire somebody else to assist the customer satisfaction team at the corporate headquarters. Well, you got to use a little imagination, because there are no customers at the corporate headquarters. But that group serves, in our case, 3,000 restaurants who are serving millions and millions and millions of customers. So if this person helps those restaurants improve customer satisfaction, we actually know that there's a direct correlation between customer satisfaction and sales and profits. So sometimes you make that investment and then you work to make that pay out over time. But it's not as direct as I'm going to hire an individual and then I'm going to ask them to serve a client and we know what that margin is. But in either case, you really don't want to make those hires if they're not going to be value producing for the organization.
Okay, so some of your examples there sound kind of easy, but others of them might be harder to quantify. Say a little more about that.
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're paid really for our judgment as leaders. And so you got to do the best you can with what you know. And not everything is knowable. And sometimes you're going to be building infrastructure. You and I've had this conversation. We're building infrastructure in our organization that we think is going to pay out over the next 5 to 10 years. So is that new hire going to make us more money as an organization? Sure, we think, right? It's a little bit of a strategic bet. By investing here, it's going to give a return. Now, the flip side, I should mention, sometimes you play defense. You may do something to limit liability. So if you hire a consultant to do that audit I mentioned earlier, that's probably not going to make you money, but it may prevent you getting in trouble later. If you work in a restaurant, if you work on food safety, you say, well, I'm not sure this is going to make me money, but if it prevents a problem and ensures people's safety, then there's value there. So I think at the end, it is a hard decision, but we just got to use the best judgment we can muster with what we know.
Okay, so let's talk about another idea. I think we want to make sure that we think beyond salary, and we also take into consideration total compensation. And I'll give a couple of examples here. One, obviously, that if somebody's got benefits and retirement and insurance, all that stuff, that would be there's a cost of having an employee. Or if you have a contractor, you're paying that person for what they're doing. But I also think it's important for us, if we're employees, let's put ourselves on the employee side here for a second. What's the benefit of working for that organization and the security of that check? And I mean, we can make a list of those things that were underneath that brand or whatever. I think sometimes though, we think if they charge this and pay me that, they get all the money left over. Well, that's actually not always the way it works. It's like, well, how do you pay for all these other infrastructural things that are helping that employee have an environment where they can be successful? So I think there's a lot there when we start thinking about having this conversation, but I want us to not get bogged down in, well, this is my salary for the year, when there's a total cost that's being invested in an employee that really is going to affect the bottom line either positively or negatively.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts come to mind. I mean, total compensation seems to have become all the craze, at least from a nomenclature standpoint, probably 20 years ago. That doesn't mean it's good or bad, but this is not something I remember people talking about 40 years ago, but it is the things you've talked about. It's things like free parking. It's things like if you've got childcare subsidies or free gym memberships. I know some businesses that have negotiated with the local gym to get some really big discounts so they can give their employees gym memberships. Yeah. And so some of that sounds
bonuses. I mean,
maybe insignificant, but we're talking about total compensation. When you add it all up, if you had to pay to park, if you had to buy your own gym membership, I worked at Chick-fil-A corporate. Truett Cathy pays for lunches for employees. Well, if you don't have to buy your lunch 5 days a week, back when we went to the office for an entire career, that's part of total compensation. So salary matters. It is the cornerstone. It is the anchor. But if you really pay attention, there are other benefits, real benefits that you could probably enumerate when you're talking with an individual, either prospective employee or an existing employee, about the value that you bring beyond the salary. Maybe even bonuses as an example. That's not typically considered as part of a salary, but it's part of the salary structure. It's part of total compensation. So just don't get hung up on the hourly wage or the annual salary. There's often stuff that is
paid days off,
overlooked.
There can be all kind of different
If
things.
you've got a 401k, if you've got a pension, most of those things are kind of going by the way of the dinosaur, but some of the older folks still have those.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, you mentioned working at Chick-fil-A, and I know so many of the, shout out to Chick-fil-A here, corporate, but I know so many people who've worked at the support center, and it's amazing. I mean, I've been there so many times, trained there and worked there, all kind of stuff to help out, but it's amazing. I don't even know how to say it. It's almost like the mood of the place. There's, and you see some organizations you go into, we have some clients, you go there and you're just like, this place is different than other places you go in, and you just don't feel that vibe. That's not a part of total compensation, but can you say something a little bit about the maybe even the psychology of working there? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, let me answer that, but let me broaden it, because it's a whole different category that I've encouraged leaders to pay attention to, and I call it psychic income.
Okay.
And it's value add that cannot be put in the bank. So it's not your 401k, your pension, your medical, your dentist. It's not financial, but it has value in the heart and mind of people. So when you create a psychologically safe workplace, that counts. When you create a place where you're building genuine community, that counts. When you create a place where people are cared for, that counts. When you create a place that is giving people real responsibility and contributing to something bigger than yourself, that counts. When you're creating a learning organization, a place where people actually learn and grow, that counts. I know one young person, they're older now, they were young at the time, they were offered twice the income to leave, and they wouldn't leave. Now, why wouldn't they leave for twice the income? You think, are they crazy? No, they had this non-tangible bank account, this psychic income of all that they were receiving beyond their paycheck. And for them, the reason this person comes to mind, for them, learning and growing and real responsibility were at the top of their list. And they're thinking, if I go to this other place, I'm going to make more money in the short run, but I don't see any indications that I'm going to learn or that I'm going to grow or they're going to have real responsibility. They just want me as a hired gun. And so leaders, particularly, I'm not saying it's a substitute for a fair wage. You and I know, we did research several years ago, top talent, those A players in your organization, they expect to be fairly compensated. And I would say fair goes back to our previous conversations about what's the market value for the job. They expect that. But when you can start layering this psychic income, I would even call it piling on, because if you do this well, if you do this thoughtfully, if you do this strategically, the competition will never touch you, because most organizations, for whatever reason, aren't focused on psychic income. You're creating a competitive advantage often associated with the culture of a place, which goes all the way back to your question about what's the vibe. Well, the vibe is a reflection of the culture, and often the culture is where you begin to identify all of these things that add value that a person's not going to be able to take to the bank at the end of the month.
I love that. I don't know that we talk about that enough, but we see it. We do see it in pockets. I mean, think about the athlete who's been in a certain place for a while, never really won. And at the end of their career, we see this a lot of times at the end of a career, they'll go take less money somewhere else to be a part of an opportunity to win. So you didn't really even talk about that, but I think there's just something in our psychic that we want to be a part of a winning organization as well. And so if you get to be a part of a brand that's doing something meaningful, we did hear in the top talent work that people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. A bigger vision is the way you wrote about it. I love that reminder, but I think part of it is the way we say it sometimes is they want to make a difference as much as they want to make a living. And I think that impact of meaningful work and a meaningful brand and all that stuff is a part of what I would put in your little bucket there. And I don't know that we said it specifically. I think people want to be well led as well. It's like if I've got a good leader, there's a good chance that I'll want to stay, right? Because we've all been in organizations where we didn't have a good leader, and that's no fun. And we probably all had a leader that was pretty good, and like that's going to keep you there longer. I heard years ago somebody say people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. Maybe all this goes back to leadership, just creating that kind of environment. So
Well,
I like psychic income. I've never heard it talked about that way. I think that's cool.
That specific comment you just made about people leaving their supervisor, not leaving the organization, that statistic has been true at least for 45 years. And it may have been true longer back than that, but that was one of the first things I learned as a new leader. And my leader shared that stat with me 45 years ago. It's like, no, the people you lead look to you to represent the organization. They know who the founder is. They know who the VP of this and that are, but you represent the organization to the people you lead. And I think that's part of our stewardship opportunity as leaders to represent the organization well.
Oh, that's great. And I'll say this, just to kind of build on what you said there. If there is tension going on and I'm a leader in an organization somewhere, and maybe I'm not the owner, I think I'm responsible for squashing that. I mean, I say squashing it. I need to make sure I pull that out and we have conversations about it, but I never want to feed any kind of negativity or allow that. I always say you can't go to a positive place with negative people. And I think if you have this undercurrent of frustration and it's never pulled to the surface and talked about, and the expectations are clear, and we've done some of the things we've talked about today, I think you're going to struggle to go to the place that you want to go to. So, okay. So can you put a bow on it? I mean, kind of put a bow on the episode here for me.
Well, I think the tension is real. So for anybody going, how do you make this happen? By the way, this question came from a young leader. So I'm assuming there are a lot of leaders out there. I've encountered a lot of leaders that want to pay their people well. They want to pay them fairly. They want to demonstrate a generous spirit, but they're also, they've got this profit mandate, this expectation. And so manage the tension. I think some of the things we talked about today will help. If you set that expectation and imperative that we're going to be a for-profit business, I think that matters. I think if you benchmark to understand what's real in the world around role and contribution, I think you need to have conversations with people, aligning their expectations with market realities. I think that matters. You've got to help people embrace the psychic income we talked about. Not even embrace, but help them feel it. Help them with total compensation. It's like, yes, here's the pay, but there's more we do for you that you're not taking into account. And so as you do those things, I think it'll help you manage the tension. And you and your employees will be thankful that you stepped into what can be a very awkward conversation. I say it's awkward because you're dealing with people's livelihood. You're dealing with people's income. And so just approach it with an attitude of grace and generosity and open-mindedness. And, you can create a place that people want to work, and it's a place they want to stay.
That's so cool. I mean, how amazing would that be if people listening can create a place that people want to work and people want to stay? I hope every time you hire somebody, anybody out there listening, or you recruit somebody, you're constantly looking at how's this person going to add value to the place. But when they get there, you seek not to extract value from them, but to add value back to their lives. And I think that virtuous cycle there can maybe take you to new heights. I'll tell you something else, Mark, that'll take them to new heights. It's the Lead Everyday book. Next week, it'll be out in the wild. You can have it. You can pre-order. You said that. I think they'll ship on September the 2nd, though. You should have your book. So hope you'll take advantage of that. Get your copy if you've not done so. Hope you'll get one for your team as well. If we can help you, go to leadeveryday.com and check that out. We'll be back with you next week. Mark, have a safe holiday weekend, and I'll see you next week, brother.
All right. Take care.
All right. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.